Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Seminar. Thank you so much for the support. Hope you all are doing great. You know, sometimes there is something that I am thinking, and I hope some of you have actually thought about this because now it looks like somebody that was raised deceased wants to be, some said he's a martyr and all that. And now he might be one of your founding fathers. See, to the best of my knowledge and to the best of my thinking, there is need for all those people that are your founding fathers. There is need to review all of them because some things that are happening presently in my eyes is telling me that there is need for you people to review all of them because majority of your founding fathers are already deceased, very rich disease. At least I am seeing this particular one that is happening right in my present. Since black people met you people, where are they? Sometimes I sit back, I was like, how did my people stay with these people this long? How did they even manage? How have they been coping? That is to tell you how bad it is. There is something that I found out, and this woman explained it better. That some of them will tell you that they don't have empathy because it gives them the room to talk the rubbish that they talk about you. Let's get into this video.
And listen, I'm not gonna let y'all gaslight me with this. I'm not, and y'all don't let them do this to you either. Honestly, we could learn a lot from this and how America's responding right now. If you ever wondered how is it possible that Columbus Day is observed as a holiday, knowing what we know about Columbus, it's stuff like this. This right here is how it's possible. See, I said it before and I'll say it again. You cannot allow racists to define racism. You cannot allow police to investigate bad policing. And you can't allow predators to be overseers of the Epstein files. Now, I'm not going to go on a tangent about history because I feel like the people below, if you really want to educate yourself, you'll educate yourself because what you were taught in school for your diploma or your degree did not educate you on true history. But only two people down here risk it all for black people. One walked the earth and for whatever reason did not prioritize slavery on its list of addressing people's sins. The other one was not really against slavery. He just manipulated the ability for states to have slavery for his own political posturing. One absolutely risked it all by being the first real president to voice injustices against black people and the treatment of black people from the highest office in America. I do not feel Martin Luther King needs an explanation. As for the other guy, if you think he's a decent person, then our definition of decent is just different. But the difference between people like me and people like you is you're trying to convince me that he's a decent person. I'm not trying to convince you of what I know about who he is. If you know who this person is, then you already know what he's about. But I'm just going to focus on anti-blackness. It's not debatable that his rhetoric was anti-black. But we can learn about America. The fact that what he said about black people, discrediting black people's credibility, intelligence, knowledge, the ability to hold high positions, to be intelligent, to be perceived as credible, to earn the things that they have achieved. All of these things, when we live in a world where black people are still fighting against racism, black people are still fighting against discriminatory practices for housing, for loans, for education, right? Healthcare. This is not new, but to say those things is reckless and it's damning. But the fact that the president, head of the FBI, corporations, businesses, millions of people, Pat McAfee, everybody, just in every industry, are out here with an outpour of support of him tells you that anti-blackness is not a problem with the majority of America. The fact that what he said about black people is not bothersome to a lot of people tells you a lot about what people think about black people in America. But if you don't see anti-blackness as a character flaw, you don't get to tell black people how to respond to anti-blackness. I don't want to hear nothing about him having a family. Hell, snakes lay eggs. The fact that anybody wants to criticize him for what he actually has said and done, and they have to put out a PSA before they say anything by saying, I don't advocate violence, while talking to people who do. See, when you pardon acts of violence, when you reward acts of violence, and you welcome acts of violence, then you cannot be surprised when those very things cultivate to eventually get to your doorstep. If you notice, they weren't out there saying they were going to go looking for the shooter. They were going out there seeking retribution for anybody who agreed with the acts of the shooter or didn't have a problem with the acts of the shooter, even enraged by people who simply didn't care of what the shooter did. But at the end of all this, the most telling part of all this is the revelation of who actually took this man's life. Because that didn't change the anti-blackness, did it? In a lot of ways, it turned up the heat even more. Because targeting black people when you're looking for domestic terrorists makes about as much sense as when OJ was out there saying he was going to find the killer for Nicole Brown Simpson. You're never going to find that killer where you're looking.
You need to look at this from an anthropological perspective and look at human beings more as like a species, an animal. It is not just our ability to feel that separates us from AI, but it is our ability to feel for each other. Empathy. The ability to empathize. And I say that empathy specifically is what makes you human because animals have feelings. For example, I've seen countless videos of like people who have multiple pets, and when one passes away, the other pet will experience depression because of the loss of their buddy. Animals can feel. Humans can empathize. Literally appears in every single major religion as what we call the golden rule. That is your ability to empathize with other people. If you are unable to empathize, if you are incapable of putting yourself in their shoes and seeing how you would want to be treated if you were them, you are lacking a key component of humanity to you. You do not support the betterment of our species. You are an active detriment to our species. And if we were still in hunter-gatherer times, you would have been weeded out as the weakest link in the community. Humans can only survive in a community. People in a community protect one another. They work together. They pool resources and share. And as seen in every other species on this planet that functions in community and not alone, it is typical that if an individual is not contributing their fair share to the community, and or if they are actively harming the community itself and the well-being of all, they are then isolated from the pack and left to die alone. It was literally necessary for the advancement of our species. Now, at some point of the human population growing, we developed wealth accumulation, right? Accumulating wealth means control because you can afford land, you can afford weaponry, or an armada if you wanted. You can afford resources, and then you can control the resources, and thus now you are in a position where you are the person dictating what happens in the community. And here's the fatal problem with that. Having a lack of empathy makes it easier to acquire wealth because you have no problem persecuting others or lying or cheating or stealing or doing whatever you have to do, including unaliving and enslaving people in your community. Because of this, communities lost the ability to weed out the people who do not have empathy and thus are harmful to the community. Not only did they lose the ability to ostracize these people, they became controlled by these people because they were able to accumulate wealth with their lack of empathy for others. And because now the people that are controlling society and ruling it are the people without empathy, we see the emergence of things like white supremacy and the patriarchy. And because of the patriarchy, women were forced to marry and reproduce with people who otherwise would not have been suitable candidates. And that is literally the reason why now, as a human community globally, we are about to have the world's first trillionaire exist, while some people cannot even afford to eat right now. Now, if you are a racist, I'd reckon you didn't stick around this long in the video. But I know that some of you are going to try to make the argument that I don't feel empathy for racists, so that makes me subhuman. And that is not true, because it is my evolutionary and biological responsibility to humans as a whole to not feel empathy towards the people who are harming the overall good of all of us. There is no reasoning or logic on this entire earth that justifies oppressing anybody. You are quite literally trying to compare non-empathy for the detriment of mankind to non-empathy for the betterment of mankind, as if they are the same thing. And I'm not saying that all racists need to die, but I am saying that I am totally okay with you guys going off on your own and starting your own communities outside of the society that I live in, because I don't want you in mine. For every racist that leaves this world, the world becomes a little bit better of a place.
This is all I got from this video, and there is something that I want to rephrase. She said that when you say you do not have, like those politicians that would say they don't have empathy, it is easier for them to do or say anything they want to say because they do not have anything about you at heart. And that is exactly what happened to this man, because I have followed this man's teaching for how many years? My channel is 4 years. Some days back. Yeah. So I have been on Black History for a while. And let's even assume that I have been on Black History for 1 year. Charlie Kirk was somebody that for those that know me, if you know me very well, and if you see me post his video, I tell you how I feel about him. And this is also a very teachable moment, not just for him. Okay, he's no longer alive to receive the teaching or the lesson or anything. For the people around, and for the wife that also said that her voice will echo on his behalf. And that, she was so aggressive with her message. I hope you don't come like your husband. Yeah. Because you guys were the ones that said that slavery was beneficial to the slaves. You guys were the ones that ignored how Black people have been treated and still ignoring it at this very moment. You guys were the ones. Even I remember when Donald Trump was removing names of Black people on the street. Is he Hall of Fame? Something like that. He was there so happy and jubilating. Was the one that made the video that spread. Is it Minnesota? Well, there is what they call that. I can't remember, but for those that really have been following me will understand what I'm talking about. Black people that have made history, that has impacted life. Their names were all removed. Yeah, that is how bad it is. And somebody will look me or look a Black person dead in the face and tell the person to be sober. You know how many years Black people have been sober or have been crying or have been really, you know how many decades? Racism is something that has eaten deep in some people, and there is need for that to be flushed out. You have to join the movement. If you do not join the movement, that is it. And a lot of people actually need to watch their back. A lot of people need to watch their back. Need to really be very careful with what they say, how they upset people, how they speak on people's experience that you never lived. that you never experienced, that your ancestors were the ones that supported all the bad things that happened to them. Yeah, you heard me right. That you support. You all better be careful with how you provoke Black people, with how you make them sad. Bye for now.